how does your ecosystem of partners, whether it's tech partners or other, how does that shape kind of the thinking, and has that evolved for Wipro over the years? How do you think about ecosystems today?
It's evolved a lot. It has, when we started, when I joined, we had partnerships. We had always had and maintained partnerships, but they were kind of managed within our practices and kind of dispersed across the business. And so often, we would make multiple investments and not sync that up. We would have clients or partners who would talk to Wipro, but, would be talking to different parts of Wipro. And so we consolidated it all under a new global organization led by Jason Eichenholz. He runs our ecosystems and partnerships. And so we looked at it, who are where are the hypergrowth partners? How do we coalesce around them in a very deliberate fashion? And not just create alliances. We've all been around the alliance. I don't even use that word anymore, because we believe that this group can not only help us connect more strongly with our partners, but also be a new channel for Wipro. Too often, we were the ones out there telling clients, like, this is the partner you need to work with. Well, now partners are coming to us and saying, hey, we've secured this agreement to migrate this client to the cloud, but we need partners to actually bring it to life and make it happen. And so the market shifted and how people think and buy. And so we had to adapt as well. And it's been a big transformation for us, but we feel, I think our partners are feeling it. You could probably tell me, but I think it's a different Wipro. And we had our first full stride partner event this year in Miami, which you all were there. It was fantastic. Really deep collaboration around solving challenges for our clients, and I just left there so energized about our partnerships and the organization itself and what we could do for our clients.
No, look, I'm actually delighted by what you said. And I took the word alliances out of our team's name, if you will. And it kind of invokes a little bit of the traditional, like, one-to-one relationship. Like, let's go have lunch, dinner, we'll sign a partnership agreement, we'll have a QBR and so on. I think as you think about an ecosystem, to me, it's a little bit like a spider's web, where no single strand in the web is that strong, but when you put it all together and you architect that ecosystem, it can be a very significant both offensive and defensive capability. You have to be deliberate, and three-way partnerships are very important. So we'd love to do things with you and Microsoft or Google or AWS and in a three-way partnership, because that's how customers consume. They don't look at this as slice pieces, if you will. So delighted that you also kind of think of it that way. Stephanie, if we kind of shift a little bit, I understand that you were in Davos this last time around and had an opportunity to obviously listen in and contribute to range. What were kind of one or two of your key learnings there? What did you walk away from as kind of new and interesting ideas? We would love some reflections from that.
It was really, it was so fascinating to be there. And I met with so many of our clients and our partners while I was there. Obviously, the economic environment was, heavy on everyone's mind. Obviously, the war in Ukraine was in early stages and weighed heavy on everyone's mind. And then I think to be one of the first events kind of coming out of the pandemic was also, well, I would say we were coming out of it, but we still were experiencing it. And so there was a lot of conversation around, how do you thrive in this new hybrid work environment? How do we deal with the talent wars and develop the next generation of talent? We spent a lot of time talking about diversity and how we create more inclusive and diverse workforces to really be able to serve our clients better and have those different viewpoints come together and coalesce to solve problems. And so I sat on a couple of panels about the future is female, which is with some of, amazing women who are senior executives in their fields, primarily in technology companies, but also in fashion retail. And then I spent time with other CEOs on panels talking about, how deliberate we need to be in driving inclusion in our environments and in our work environments. And for me, that's obviously a passion project of mine. It's one of the reasons I joined Wipro, is because I thought, Thierry believes that we need to be a more diverse organization and more inclusive. And obviously, by being the first woman on the executive board and setting an example for other women inside and outside the company, that would help to drive the agenda, and it certainly has. We're going again in January, and I think as we look at the recession and our impending recession and other economic factors, I'm sure it will also be on everyone's mind. But the other big topic was really around sustainability, and how do you become a sustainable business, and what role do we have in helping our clients achieve their sustainability goals? And so you'll hear more from us in the coming weeks about what we're doing around sustainability. But again, it's through our partnership with you and with others, where we can really make a difference for our clients and helping them achieve their sustainability goals. So a lot of good topics, a lot of still unknowns as we still navigate through uncertainty. But again, for us as a company, we see it as a great opportunity to really have impact for our clients, whether they're trying to cut costs to sustain their business or really accelerate, new revenue sources in a challenging world. So a lot to talk about.
So maybe if I could double click on the diversity piece of it for a moment, right? I mean, I think the technology industry, broadly speaking, of the services industry, important strides have been made, but still a much longer journey to go on. And role models matter a lot. And I'm sure not just inside Wipro, but your role as a role model in a senior role and from a services perspective. What have you found to be the one or two most important levers that companies can deploy in terms of recruiting, enabling, supporting, mentoring both women, but also from a racial diversity perspective? What's worked in your experience?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to value it. You have to understand that diversity is not something we should do. It's something we have to do. Especially when I think about it from a female perspective, the pandemic just had devastating impact on women in business and really took us back years in terms of not only women opting out of the workforce to care for families, but also, just from an educational perspective, even younger generation. So first, I think you have to value it and understand that it's a key imperative to drive growth. And so I think that's number one. I think number two is creating those role models and having them inside the organization, whether, regardless of the form of diversity, but showing, people want people to look up to, that they can admire and emulate. And so I think creating, promoting those people into positions of leadership so that others can see, hey, I can do that someday, is number two. And I think three is, and I use the word mentoring. I think mentoring gets talked about a lot, but I think it's more than that. I think it's advocating. Whether you're a leader advocating for a new, someone coming up in the organization, or, you're in a room in a meeting with your peers and, someone talks over someone or doesn't respect a diverse opinion, or at least allow that person to be heard, advocating with them and for them in the organization. And I think that's what I've tried to be very deliberate about since joining Wipro. I have a pretty open door policy. Anyone who wants to connect on, learning or challenge or share their experience to grow together, I'm open for that. And then I personally have been involved in not just mentoring other women in the organization, but also really advocating for them, making sure in promotion cycles they're considered, or they're challenging themselves to take roles they might otherwise not want to take because they're not sure if they're ready for it yet, and just kind of pushing that along. So I think it's just so important, and I'm really proud at Wipro to lead a very diverse team. And so part of that is just, leading by example.
No, look, thank you for what you do, and the passion obviously clearly comes out. And it takes multiple people in multiple different levels on a sustained basis. And you're right, it has to be very deliberate, and certainly nothing related to just checking the box, because the organization loses out on talent in a very big way if you don't do that. Going to kind of maybe a little bit of your personal journey, Stephanie, in terms of the pandemic, it's been obviously, people have been impacted from a health perspective, in some cases in very sad ways. But beyond that, it's impacted, I think, society and individuals in far more profound ways than even we understand right now. How did your life, and beyond the obvious working from home versus not, like what did you learn during the pandemic about how you work, but also importantly, how you live and play? Did you pick up things or drop things? Like, how have you managed through the pandemic and the learnings there?
It was really traumatic for me because I'm a very social person. I learned through meeting. I enjoy meeting people and engaging with people. I traveled every week at the time. So all of a sudden to be home and not be able to connect with people and not be able to travel was really mentally hard for me. The upside was my children came home from college. So I got to be a stay-at-home mom for the first time in my career. And so I enjoyed that. I think for me, it was really, it made me kind of slow down and find balance. It's early in the pandemic. All of a sudden, I had all this time on my calendar that used to be filled up with cab rides and plane rides and meetings that really weren't that important. And in the month that, everyone paused a little bit while still trying to keep business running, all of a sudden my calendar started filling up again. It's like nobody knew what to do. So let's have a meeting. And so I really became very deliberate about how I spend my time, and I protected my own time. I needed that from a mental health perspective to go for a walk or maybe watch a show that I wouldn't have had time to do, or just hang out with my kids and talk about make dinner together and do those kinds of things. So for me, I was very blessed that I didn't have anyone in my family affected in a substantial health way. But at the same time, for us, it was a great time to really just slow down and realize that all of the things that we so valued before the pandemic didn't really matter anymore. And we could kind of reset what was important. And I learned to slow down, which is not easy for me. But it was definitely a life-changing, and still is. I think we're still kind of recovering from it. And what does the new normal look like? So a lot of learnings there.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a better normal, and not just a new normal, if you will. But yeah, again, the profound changes at the individual level, and people focus a lot on where are you sitting and working and remote and hybrid and so on. And I think that, in my view, is a much smaller piece of the change that's happened. That's the most visible one on where you're working. I think the much more invisible but much more profound one is how individuals look at their life, and what's important and what's not important, and the decisions they're going to make, which I think is out of every tragedy and every challenge comes opportunity, and comes some advantages. And I think this is a big one where people are going to value based on, they understand there's a finite amount of time
I think we all became more human. I'd always tried to separate work from life, and this was my work persona and this is my life persona, and all of a sudden they came clashing together. And so I think, and we were all vulnerable. I mean, there wasn't a single person that wasn't vulnerable in one way, shape, or form. I think it taught me a lot about, being vulnerable myself and connecting with people, being more empathetic to the folks that I work with, whether they be clients or internal team members, and just being authentic. Like, we all had the dog barking and some had babies crying in the background, and, life was happening while we worked.
So did you watch a lot of TV during this time period? Any favorite shows that you binge watched?
We watched a lot of TV. I'd say we loved Yellowstone. That was a favorite. Ted Lasso was a favorite. It was kind of a lighthearted comedy in the middle of a lot of darkness. And then we got hooked on the Great British Baking Company, which are baking show. And we started baking cakes at my house. So I didn't know, I don't have a talent for it, I discovered, but it was fun for us to watch that and then have some fun with it when it was over. But yeah, too much TV, but it was good while it lasted.
Look, I think all of these things and honestly, I would say we're talking about these things more openly, as evidenced by this conversation, which just seems much more of a natural conversation to talk about dogs and shows and this, that, and the other, which I'm not sure would have happened as openly 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And it feels far more natural now to have that conversation and to bring our authentic selves to the table, which is super important. So Stephanie, look, thank you very much for your time. This has been a great conversation. We truly value the partnership with Wipro. I think there's not just strategic alignment, but there's also very much of a cultural and people alignment, which to me is very important. We're excited about what we're doing together in the market, and I hope we continue to do that and deepen that. So thank you again, Stephanie, Wipro's Chief Growth Officer. Love the conversation around the ecosystem and industry trends, and look forward to continuing our collaboration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Zia. It's great to be here.